For more than 100 years, the story of the Titanic continues to fascinate the public, historians, and romantics. A new exhibit in Tampa, Titanic: An Immersive Voyage Through the Eyes of the Passengers, offers you a chance to experience the Titanic like never before. It features more than 300 artifacts, cutting-edge technology, and also takes you 2.5 miles below sea level. Joining us now is John Zaller. He is the executive producer of the interactive exhibit, and he is joining us now from Dublin, Ireland, where you are working on another exhibit. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be talking about Titanic: An Immersive Voyage, one of my favorite exhibits I've ever made.
Well, the story of the Titanic is a mainstay of pop culture. It has been remembered and romanticized for a century. Why are we so enamored with the story of the Titanic?
The Titanic story is an evergreen story that relates to all of us, no matter where we are in our lives. So, from an early age to the end of our lives, there's some part of the Titanic story that we connect to. And it also has to do with those passengers that you mentioned in the intro. Somehow, all of us are connected to those passengers at some point in our lives. We're all reflected in the Titanic story. And I think that's why it resonates so strongly is any of us could have been on board that ship and experienced those harrowing circumstances.
And the exhibit shares some of these human stories, the human stories of the passengers. What are some of the stories visitors will learn about as they enjoy this experience?
Each visitor, as they come into the exhibit, becomes a passenger, really. We give everybody a boarding pass. The boarding passes are created using biographical information from those who were actually on board the ship. And so you become a passenger, you become a first class, second class, or third class passenger or member of the crew. We have hundreds of of those passengers detailed in these boarding passes. And as you go through the exhibit, you start to feel connected to that passenger, to where they were on board the ship. You start to wonder, what was it like in first class or second class or third class or in the crew quarters? And at the end of the experience, there's a memorial wall where you can see whether your passenger lived or died. And it's a very powerful moment. You Titanic really is a pop culture phenomenon to such an extent that in a way it's become a little bit mythologized. Is it a real story? When you get to that memorial gallery and you see your name among the saved or the lost, it makes you realize that it's a real story that still has incredible impact today.
It also captures love stories from honeymooners and couples reuniting. How does the exhibit bring the romantic element to life?
So as you go through the experience with that boarding pass, you can visit our interactive kiosks and learn more about your passengers. So, for example, Victor and Maria Penasco, who were newlyweds traveling from Spain, uh, were on board the ship and had a experience where Victor was lost and Maria survived, and you could hear her wailing through the night across the open waters. There's so many stories like that, like Isidore Isidore Strauss and his wife, the founder of Macy's, who decided that they would stay together instead of putting her in a lifeboat, and they both perished. So throughout the experience, you're meeting these passengers where they are on board the ship. You're experiencing the life on board the ship. But then when you get to the reality of that tragic night, you see how couples made those split-second decisions to save for a husband to save his wife or for a wife to say, "I'm gonna stay with you." There's also incredible stories of families, whole families like the Sage family, who actually were headed to Florida, who all were lost in the sinking.
It's very emotional. Can you tell me more about the elaborate sets and the technologies that help enhance this experience?
Absolutely. So, as you go through the experience, we've recreated several scenes from the Titanic, from the grand staircase to the boarding the side of through the side of the ship, through the D-deck door, through the first class restaurant, and we've created all these in a way where they're built at one-to-one scale. So while we couldn't necessarily build the entire restaurant, we built the full width of the restaurant, so you could experience what it was like to be on board the ship in these incredible spaces and feel some of that grandeur and luxury. Titanic was the most opulent ship ever created, And many naval historians agree that to this day, it still is the most opulent ship ever created because of the incredible craftsmanship that was when the ship was all built in Ireland, where I am right now. You, after having experienced the ship sinking, you then get the chance to dive to the Titanic wreck site through the magic of virtual reality. So it's a very special technique using free roam VR where you actually uh walk through predefined boundaries inside of a room and you dive to the wreck site of the Titanic, and you get to do a tour of around the bow section of the ship that is more realistic and gives you a better view of the wreck site than if you actually dove to it yourself. It's incredibly powerful to see that wreck sitting there 2.5 miles beneath the surface of the ocean, more than 110 years after it sank, in all of its remaining glory, and for that all that history to come back to you in a really powerful way.
And I have a question about families that might want to attend this exhibit. Is there an age that you recommend, or are all children welcome?
The Titanic and Immersive Voyage experience really is from 4 to 104 or 4 to 124. There's something for everybody. There's something for kids. Kids love the immersive experience. They love the set recreations. You'd be surprised how fascinated they are with the artifacts. And then the VR is a huge hit for everybody because not only do you experience the wreck itself, but then you go inside the ship and the ship comes to life like you could never imagine. So there's literally a surprise around every corner for every age group.
You also incorporate information for history buffs as well. What can we learn from this exhibit?
So the story of Titanic is one that we all know a little part of, but the backstory from why Titanic was created is really an amazing story in and of itself. It has to do with the Industrial Revolution, millions of immigrants coming to the United States and North America every year, and the transatlantic shipping lines saw an opportunity to grow and increase their revenue by building these bigger and bigger liners. So as the liners got bigger, the liners also got faster. There was a huge competition in the market for the ship that could get you to the United States, to North America the fastest. And what happened with White Star Lines was they said, we're not going to be the fastest, but we're going to be the most luxurious, not only for our first class passengers, but also for our third class passengers who had previously been tucked in and amongst the steering equipment and the mechanics of the ship. Suddenly they had their own cabins, their own common areas, their own recreational spaces. And that really it set a whole new bar for transatlantic travel. And it comes from that entire history of the Industrial Revolution, so many people moving to the United States to start a better life.
This exhibit has already appeared in various cities around the country and it's now in Tampa. How long does it take for someone to go through it? And what do you hope visitors will take away from this experience?
So I'd plan about 90 minutes because you do have your intro galleries, all your scenic recreations, hundreds of artifacts. But we also have our immersive room where in a 30-minute video, you experience the last night on board the ship in a way that can't be replicated. You're actually in a lifeboat watching the Titanic sink and not being able to do anything about it, which creates that incredible emotional connection. So you really do need about 75 to 90 minutes to go through the experience. And my hope for visitors who come to the experience is that when you leave Titanic and Immersive Voyage, you leave not only with a better understanding of the history, but a better understanding of yourself. You ask the question, "What would I have done in that circumstance?" And it's on that fateful night when there weren't enough lifeboats for everyone, when the information wasn't being shared, when it was save yourself or save others. And these are questions that really come up during the experience in a very powerful and emotional way that creates really rich opportunity for reflection and great conversations afterwards.
It looks incredible, and I certainly hope to be able to enjoy it. And thank you so much for joining us from Dublin, Ireland, to share more about how you produce this amazing experience, Mr. Zoller.
Thanks. It's my pleasure, and we look forward to welcoming everybody to Titanic and Immersive Voyage.
Thanks for watching. We've got more great content for you, from the news to the arts to the environment. So be sure to like and subscribe to WGCU's YouTube channel and follow us on all of the social media platforms for the stories that matter to you.